I think Tau has set a good example. Okay. Yes. Good evening, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. To borrow from Tau, senior journalists and editors, I believe. Indeed, it's an unusual gathering, and I think a gathering, hopefully, that will go into the future. When our people who work in this sector, in Parliament, came to present this concept, we all were very receptive, very actually relieved by the nature and the way they had conceived it. In particular, when they said to us, we want you, on behalf of Parliament, to interact as human beings with other human beings working in the media. Now, somehow it takes me back to a day when I lost my innocence on these issues. Really, because I remember that when for many years one operated from outside the country, somehow the issue of the media, okay, you read Zambian newspapers or Tswana newspapers or Zimbabwean or whatever, and you kind of knew that obviously in South Africa too there are journalists, but hardly understanding or having an insight, you know, at a deeper level than just knowing journalists are there and they write, and that's why we have a lot of stuff to read from all over. And the day came when we came back to South Africa, and one had the general view that journalists are human beings that have a job to do, and they must do that job. And you carried on with your life until one day something comes in the newspaper and you say, eh? This thing can hit you. So, and then you continue with your life and you deal with this thing as you have experienced it. But there comes a time when all of us have a responsibility. I think tonight is actually saying that to us. You know what? We've got a job to do, and that's the job of playing our roles, which we are playing at the moment because you have the job you have. I also have the responsibility imposed by the fact that I've been put there. So we definitely, therefore, have a role to play in ensuring that we service this boss that we all have. And it's the same boss, and that's our people. Now, how have we done? Because also, apart from the fact that tonight we're meeting, and I hope we will be fed at some point. Okay. Apart from the fact that we're going to break bread together, tomorrow is Heritage Day. How does it connect with us as Parliament? I think one of the most important things we should remember tonight is that this is a year when we celebrate 20 years of beginning to put a basis for a future, hopefully very strong nation. And a nation that would be surrounded by what we hopefully will recognize as the kind of democracy that our people fought for. So we say we celebrate 20 years, not of democracy, because this country is not a democratic country yet, but we have traveled quite a distance in the journey to build that which at that point we will recognize and be proud is the democracy that our people fought for, that our people died for, that our people continue to hope for. So I think Heritage Day is a day that's one of those that remind us that we should be proud, not only of the past, in particular 103 years, because our people devised a very meaningful way of fighting for this moment that we now have. 20 years of having continued to struggle to put in place institutions to enable us to continue to build this democracy. So I thought, that's important for us to relate to what we do as Parliament, because Parliament is also about that. It's about aspiring continuously and putting in whatever it is we need to put in to make sure that this thing we're wishing for, that we hope one day we will see and be very proud, because we will have no doubt that, this is what we've been fighting for. In other words, we should accept that indeed we're not yet there, but that we've put in place mechanisms, tools, institutions that we know there's no doubt will enable us to get there. What has happened in the past 20 years in Parliament? We came in there, and frankly, it took time for many parliamentarians to realize that indeed they are now inside Parliament. Yes, it's not yet what we think we need, so we have to transform it, but we were in Parliament. Because many of us would stand there at the podium and say, this Parliament, and pointing fingers at this Parliament and carry on about it. I remember Peter Mkaba standing there one day. And you have to remind the comrade, you are now in charge here in this Parliament. You are no longer outside the gates and throwing stones inside Parliament. So those days were not easy. But we got in there, we began to learn how do you refer to each other as honorable members, and with this bowing thing and everything. It's now part of our culture. It's the parliamentary culture. And we've also interacted with the rest of the world. We've gone to many parliaments, we've observed, we've picked up that which we would like to borrow from, but there are other things maybe which we don't mind not having or not borrowing from. But one of the most important things we did in Parliament was to produce a constitution. Those who were around Matata would remember that the Parliament or the parliamentarians that had been elected in 1994, when they got there, they were divided into two houses, and they did what MPs do everywhere. But there was this specific item on the agenda, and that was these two houses coming together, having one agenda, and that was the Constitution. So it was this same Parliament that produced this Constitution that we have, if we may remember. So we started on a road where everything we do as South Africans, we would want to refer to the basic rules that are contained in Parliament. And remember, the values that we gave, that we breathed into Parliament, were values captured in a set of what we called constitutional principles. They were values that are also contained in the Freedom Charter, very historic document of South Africa, of the people of South Africa. In other words, we are asserting also as Parliament that this constitution that is here, that is guiding our society, was produced in Parliament, and we're quite proud of that. Fast forward, lots of things happened in Parliament, and we can say a lot about it, but that's not the intention of us meeting here. Except just to say, we did change Parliament. In the past, we used to know of and be aware of a Parliament, but which we were not welcome to. We opened the doors of Parliament. We said, this Parliament is a people's Parliament. People must be able to come, you know, sit through sittings of the houses, come to public hearings when committees of Parliament are out there trying to interact with the society to find out what their views are on issues. Our people are able to sit in at committee meetings so that should there be a way in which they enrich that which the committees are doing, they do so. So Parliament has since opened up for our people. I know for a fact, because that's when one was able to more directly make an input, that from the third Parliament, we said, let's actually focus. Let's pay a lot more attention on the question of access to the work of Parliament by our people, public participation. We started to be very focused on the issues of accountability of Parliament. How do we deepen that? So that I'm also saying we opened up various angles and various ways of ensuring that the very way in which Parliament functions enriches the input and the participation by our people. And so one of the structures we started back under Frini Jinwala was what we call the Speakers Forum. Because what we did was to say, let us ensure that the national Parliament and the provincial legislatures in each of the provinces can enrich one another, can enrich their understanding of the work, the role of Parliament, and we used to meet, and we still have a Speakers Forum through which we enrich the ability of the people who are given roles in the legislature, and in fact now what we call the legislative sector. And I must acknowledge the resources of the European Union in enabling us to keep coming together and to keep ensuring that even the people who service, the parliamentary service, the people who support the political programs, that we come and process through parliaments and the legislatures, that they are trained in their various aspects of responsibility, whether it be in the area of financial management, whether it be the people who are the chief administrators, both at national and at the provincial levels of the legislatures. So a lot of work continues to go on because we acknowledged that we were coming into a new terrain. I have to say that I think we are very far from where we were at that time, which was, by the way, a place where from the first Parliament we all recognized. Those who had been in the Parliament pre-1994 and those who were coming into this terrain for the first time, that none of us were experienced parliamentarians, because there was no way they were going to be experienced when we were now about something totally different from what Koos and others had been participating in. An aspect which remains for us to address is the fact that we came into a very tiny space that had always been meant for a few people, a few South Africans, who came and churned out laws for all of us. And there we came, clearly with a different mandate, and many more warm bodies than had to populate that parliament to this day was still like that, and therefore was squeezed into that place and are needing to address that issue. Because we are now in a situation where parliamentary committees are having to hold meetings in hotels at great cost. And so in this fifth parliament, that's one of the things we are determined that we will attend to, so that we can leave our people a proper parliament with enough space for the various role players to play their roles. I can tell you of one date in the South African political calendar when it's like you could stretch that gallery and make it much, much bigger, because South Africans want to come and participate. Whenever you have the State of the Nation address, they want to be counted, they want to be there. So, colleagues, I'm just highlighting some things to say we've walked this road. We now have different structures that were not there before. We have a parliamentary budget office, which is about enriching our interaction with the national budget on our own terms, based on the in-house skills that we've built into Parliament, so that we don't have to go to the same executive who have actually brought the budget, the draft budget. But of course, remember, we all have the same boss. We play different roles at different corners of our system, but at the end of the day, we have one fiscus. We have to make sure that there's enough resources for every one of the roles that are key that have to be played so that we can indeed deliver. We should also make sure that when we interact with the executive, it's not about how loud you are or how crude or how you sound adversarial. It's not about that. It's about us being well informed. It's about us understanding what we're dealing with. It's about us ensuring that that executive member knows that we're raising issues on behalf of our people, and we are determined that they have to be raised and that they have to be responded to. We are not different people. I spent a few months in the executive, and I really saw that, okay, we are actually all dealing with the same agenda. You approach it from this end, and that's your job. I will sit here and I'm going to look at that thing, and I'm going to do it from the perspective of where I am. The judiciary will be watching all of us, holding that constitution which we formulated in Parliament. And they will be saying, you are out of line. And in fact, they've done that a few times. Taken pieces of legislation back to Parliament and said, no, here, you've missed it. So that is our understanding of our job, and we are actually hoping that as we continue into the future, we are less and less about drama, we are less and less about maybe I must show baby who I am. I think it's about the quality of the product in terms of the democracy we're trying to build that we produce together. Because no one of us, there isn't one of the three arms of the state that can alone play this role and put before South Africa a satisfactory product. And so from our side, we will hope for continuing engagement, not necessarily tonight. Tonight, we want to be relaxed because Luzuko said, talk to the other human beings, talk, show your human side. I don't know how you show your human side, but well, here we are, and we hope we will spend a good evening. We will lift glasses of champagne. We will break bread together as South Africans and get to know each other and where we are much better than we have before. Thank you very much for your attention.
The dream is real. This is how it feels. Hey, once in your life.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Without wasting time, ask the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Thandi Modise. Also that I think Luzuko has some prepared inputs from the various presiding officers that we'll share with yourselves for if you want to extract anything for writing further.